Let's get into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Creative Point of View podcast. My name is Ethan.
Noah.
Marquis.
And today we have the legend, TJ Rude. Thanks for being on, man. Friend of the podcast, friend of the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate it.
Noah, you know TJ the best. Give him his proper introduction.
Yeah, so TJ is the man behind Northern Vessel. Man, I don't know. I feel like I don't really need to introduce him. Like, I feel like everybody knows this guy now at this point, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Let's just get into it, and let's just, for the people that don't know you, kind of give them a proper introduction.
Yeah, so my name is, again, TJ Rude. I'm from Johnston and born and raised there. Was homeschooled all throughout until high school.
Let's go.
And went to our Christian Academy, which is no longer a school, but graduated from there with the strong 21 kids in my class. The school is actually K through 12. Little fun fact. So
Wow.
You walk down the halls and see little kindergartners, and it was wild.
Man.
Yeah. Went to DMAC for a couple of years, got my 2-year, went to Grandview I took like one class and was like, school isn't for me. From there, we can get into more of the story, but yeah, that's up until about age 24. That was my upbringing for sure.
And you just turned the big 3-0.
I did. That's right.
Congrats, man.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
3 decades.
It's crazy.
That is insane.
That's weird to hear that part.
Yeah.
How
does
it feel to be 30? It feels great. I feel like 20s was a struggle for sure. A lot of figuring life out, a lot of mistakes. But I feel like heading into my 30s that I'm ready to go. You know.
Nice.
So
I saw that post you made on your birthday, and like the caption, like all the 30 things that you've learned over like 30 years. That like hit me. Like I screenshotted it and I have it in my camera because I was like, dang, like that's really good stuff right there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Sweet.
So tell us about like your introduction into coffee. Like how did you even get started in all
Totally.
this?
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, I lived in LA. Or maybe I didn't say that yet. Just kidding. So after Grandview, moved to LA for just 6 months. But it was a really pivotal time in my life, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I felt like I was in this position where every job I could think of was a dead-end job. I didn't really feel like I had the skill set to progress in any type of company. I didn't really have hard skills. I did not really develop my soft skills even by then. And so I felt pretty stuck. I was also having some health issues. And so my sister lived about 2 hours east of LA. And so I said, I'm going to go out there, meet some friends, and really start kind of figuring things out. What a good opportunity to be by the ocean and to see the mountains every day and be in the sunshine. And so all around it just felt like a good decision. So went out there, lived with 7 other guys, all of which were doing incredible things. And I was very fortunate to live with them. And so from there, I didn't have a car. I had a single speed bike, and there were, California's very hilly. So I couldn't go very far because, again, there was no gears. And so everywhere I'd go, if I had a hill, I would have to bike up a hill with 1 speed.
Man.
So my radius wasn't very far, but I found this one coffee shop called Arc, and every day I would go there. I didn't even really like coffee at the time, but I started to kind of broaden my my taste, I guess, of what I liked. And so I would start going there every day and start getting to know the staff. And one day, this is about actually 4 months in, they're like, hey, do you want a job? I'm like, actually, I would love that. And so started working there. And the first day I was like, this is what I want to do for a long time. I don't know about the rest of my life, but at least as long as I can see, this is what I want to do. What attracted me so much to it was, first of all, I didn't know coffee could taste the way that it did. I had espresso. I was like, oh, I actually like this. I had no idea I would like espresso. Oh, this is what a cappuccino tastes. I had no idea. At that point in time, Des Moines coffee scene was like the Wild West in terms of just, there was nothing. You'd see tumbleweeds kind of. And so especially coffee was not really a thing. There was like one shop that was doing some good things, but that was pretty much it. And so I said, you know what, like I had never experienced anything like this before, and I really like it. And then I started working. They threw me into the deep end, started working nights by myself. I had no real training, and the company was actually going over a change in ownership. So it was kind of wild. But I started to develop a community of people where I would serve them. I started to see regular faces, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I probably made terrible drinks, but they kept coming back, and I felt like I started to get to know these people. And something clicked in me of like, this is a real opportunity where I feel like I naturally, I think, have a creative leaning, but I never knew how to foster it. Especially, and I'm sure we'll get into this more, but especially growing up, my family was very much like, hey, just work hard, find a job, work that the rest of your life, and find something you kind of enjoy, but just get up every day, work hard, and that's all that really matters. And so for me, there were a lot of good principles that I learned that, especially through sports and whatnot. But looking back, I was way more creative than I realized. At least I had that leaning, had that tendency in me. And so coffee felt like this happy medium where it took a lot of work to work in coffee, a lot of long shifts, a lot of serving people, a lot of dishes, all of that. But it was creative. And that had really attracted me, that I was like, I don't know how to use a camera. I don't know how to do design. I don't know how to do any of the hard skills from a creative side. But in the way in which you think with coffee, like maybe there's a future here. And so that really was my first introduction to specialty coffee, as well as maybe this could be a career for me.
Wow.
So tell us about, okay, so you lived there for 6 months and you got a job. So like what brought you back to Des Moines, or what happened after LA?
I think I got spooked a little bit because I felt like there was a moment in time where I was like, I may never leave LA. All my family, besides my sister, lives in Des Moines. And there was a moment where I felt like, and just to be transparent, I'm not like super close with my family, but there was enough pull there where I was like, if I don't leave now, I may never come back. And I've always envisioned myself being in Des Moines long term. And so in some ways I felt like, okay, I think I've learned what I've needed to learn in order to come back. I think looking back, it was premature. I think I should have waited a little longer. However, it all worked out. And so it was really like this draw of, okay, I think I know what I'm going to do when I get back. I kind of have a rough idea, a rough plan. Number 2, I have some family there. And number 3, I want to be there long term.
Cool. So what did that look like practically whenever you came back? Take us through some of those steps of where you were to where you decided to start Northern Vessel.
For sure. So the seed was planted immediately. Like that first day, seed was planted of, I think I could do this. From there, it went to, I don't have any of the hard skills of knowing how to actually like work as a barista. I need to get my skill set up. I also need to get my skill set up of learning how to serve people, and then just learning the industry of like how to actually run, a coffee shop / run a business. So I got back to Des Moines and I started working for St. Kilda. At the time, there was just one location. And so I worked very closely with a team that had been there at the start. And it was different in that season for St. Kilda, I think, because they were brand new. The owner was there all the time. And in that one location, obviously. And so I feel like it was a really good place for me to enter in and kind of learn from people who were really trying to bring something new to Des Moines. And that was really cool for me because like the owner and he brought a couple of friends with him. They were all from New York City, and so they've all done some pretty big things. And so having the opportunity to like see the drive that they had of like, okay, we're not going to operate like most Des Moines companies operate, or most like food and beverage companies operate. We're going to operate differently. It was a different level of service, different level of excellence, and that really intrigued me. It was incredibly challenging because I didn't actually work on bar very much. I would work as a server. And so I was like, I wasn't expecting this. I wanted to work in coffee, but learning to wait tables actually was pivotal. And so in that time frame, I was like, I'm just going to learn as much as I can and start thinking about what I want to do. And it became really clear that I didn't want to have a coffee shop. I was like, I don't want to have a brick and mortar. I don't feel like I'm in a spot to do that. It's really expensive. I feel like everyone I talk to who has a shop is super poor or doesn't know how to actually make it sustainable financially. And typically the people I talked to who were not doing super well financially, they didn't care because like I just love what I do. And I'm like, cool, like that's awesome. But for me, I want to have a family someday. I want to have kids. I want to get married. So that's not going to be a sustainable route. So how do I do this? And started to really learn the business side through that experience. And but the seed was planted of like, okay, if it's not going to be a coffee shop, what's it going to be? And that's when the coffee cart kind of with that was when that thought came about.
Cool.
So what year was that?
So this is 2018 that I really started to think seriously about the coffee cart, about actually launching something.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fall of 2018.
Okay. Man, that's crazy. It's crazy just your story about how like when you went to LA, you knew nothing about coffee.
Zero.
And now that's what you do. And you know,
you didn't even drink. You say you didn't even drink
Not
coffee
really,
at that
no.
time.
No.
Wow.
Yep.
That's crazy.
So what was the like, I don't know, the spark where it's like, oh, coffee now interests me, where it's like, I want to create and be creative with coffee, because now you know, not only you create, but you have a team of baristas who create drinks.
Yep.
Where was that in the moments of like, how do I want to be a creative barista?
Absolutely. I think that I view entrepreneurship in general as a professional problem solver. That's kind of how I view it. And so what was so attractive to me was I felt like I could see a lot of issues with the coffee industry. And I felt like I never got super into like third wave specialty coffee. Some people get really, really deep into it, and like, by all means, like there's a lot of fun stuff there. But for me, that never really attracted me because there was a certain tone, a certain attitude that I didn't like. And I was like, okay, I'm seeing all these issues within the coffee industry. I'm not really in it, so I feel like I can kind of be on the outside looking in. And what if I was in a position to help try to solve some of these problems? And that was what made me stoked, because I was like, I don't really care about coffee. Like I do, but not compared at all to most coffee professionals that I know.
Sure.
Like my care of coffee is so
You wouldn't consider yourself a coffee snob?
No, I mean, I like good coffee, of course, but I'm not going to be like, I feel like this is an analogy I've thought about before that hopefully it resonates. It's almost like having good coffee is the equivalent to wearing good basketball shoes when you play basketball. It's like, yeah, it's important, but it's almost like, well, if you don't have good shoes, how do you expect to do well? Yeah. You know, but it's a small piece. It's like, you want to make sure you have good support and they're comfortable and that you can make the movements you need to make. But like, that's a very small piece of the game.
Sure.
And I think that in some ways, good coffee is just the first step to even get into the game. If you don't have good coffee, it's kind of like there's enough tools, enough equipment out there that's like, I think everyone should be able to make good coffee. So that was like square one of like, that's just to even get in the game.
Cool. So you can probably speed this up so that way we don't
100%
stay on this,
100%.
but coffee cart, Northern Vessel, synonymous, and now it's KOA.
Yeah.
So give us a short synopsis of like what happened, and now we're here today.
So there was one thought that led the whole conversation, and that was, how do I get my product into as many hands as possible? Start with the cart, because I was like, I don't think a shop's going to work. So if I have a cart, maybe I can go to events. Maybe I can go to weddings and graduations where there's going to be tons of people at one location. I can get my product into a lot of people's hands. So that thought carried me throughout the next few years. So that was the initial thought with the cart. And then it went to deliveries during COVID. Coffee shops are not open. I have this van. I have this product called a cold brew latte. We have bottles. Let's just start delivering to people. Same thought. Let's get our product into as many hands as possible. Later that year, we opened up shop with the cart on the street. Hey, people are going to feel more safe during COVID to be outside. Get our product into as many hands as possible. We did like a sublease for a little bit, couple months. Same thing. It's going to be winter. It's going to be cold. We can't be outside. Let's get our product into as many hands as possible. Closed down 2021. KOA was on the radar, and I felt like it wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right opportunity at the moment. But I started kind of planning of like, I think this is the right location. This is not the right time. This is not the right game plan for it. And it came to just over time, over the next year of just like, okay, listen, a shop is necessary because our brand, it needs a physical presence. It needs a home base.
Sure.
But that's not like the end. Mm-hmm. The end is still, how do we get our product into as many hands as possible? How do we do that? And so the first step is just, let's establish ourselves with a home base, which is now KOA, that we can spring off of. Mm-hmm. So that's a really quick, I think it's the fastest I've ever gone through that process.
Yeah.
But it's all the same thread of getting our product, I keep saying it, getting our product into as many hands as possible. Yeah. Cart, delivery, street side, sublease, and now KOA.
That process in 2020 was probably in 2021 when you had to shut things down, probably had a lot of bumps along the way, shutting down and then Brunch Club and then ultimately in 2022 opening. Yeah. What were some of those like pivotal moments and teaching times that you learned?
Totally. Failure is a great teacher. When I shut down in 2021, it was the result of poorly executed ideas. I think that we had ideas after ideas after ideas that I think were good ideas, but they were misplaced. And they were ideas to help keep us afloat, but I think ultimately it made us implode. We didn't have the resources. I got a lot of really bad counsel looking back in that time that I think contributed to that. There was a lot of thought of, hey, don't get into business with anyone. Don't have any type of ownership. Don't share your ownership. Don't, no one's going to give you any money. So you just got to make it. And I took that advice. And I think there was actually opportunities that people said, hey, listen, let me help you. And I was like, no, because of that advice. And so I think that if I would have asked for money, I think people saw what we were doing. I think people would have invested. At the same time, though, I don't think I would have handled it well. I don't think I was in a position to handle that next step. I had to go through a lot of failure to understand, okay, what I was wanting to do didn't work. I was too aggressive. I was too impatient. I couldn't let things play out as much as I should have. And I just didn't have the business sense that I needed. And so in that year of being away, there was a huge concentration of figuring out the finance part. How do we actually make money serving coffee? We saw glimpses of it, that we were able to bring in money, but we didn't know how. I was very financially illiterate. I didn't know what to do with it. And so in that time frame, I worked for a real estate investment company, and I had to work spreadsheets, and I had to start planning out projections. And it started to give me some different perspective on how money works, how to think about expenses, and making sure that all expenses are covered, making sure that you're addressing unforeseen opportunities. Listen, am I ignoring something that's here, or am I really overlooking a big threat to this? And so that really taught me some hard skill of working on spreadsheets. I'm still not very good at them, but it started giving me at least enough perspective on it that I would say this: I don't know a lot, but I know enough to be dangerous. And so from there, I started to have a very different mindset of, okay, listen, I failed big time. A lot of people trusted me to go on board with me, and know I was an intern at the time for his DMAT class. And after 2 months, I was like, listen, this isn't working. We got to shut the doors. But failure was a huge drive. When we closed, I had nothing. I invested all my money into Northern Vessel. I literally had no money at all. And I was like, listen, I don't have anything. I have outstanding debt. What am I going to do? And so that was an incredible driver to thinking really, really smart, to match my strategy with how hard I was willing to work.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Was your experience in real estate also a contributor to you guys eventually getting the KOA spot? Did that knowledge that you learned help translate into that?
Yes and no. I had already talked to the owner of KOA before we closed, and so I knew that location was prime. I knew had a ton of opportunity. However, I knew that there was a lot of things I didn't know about the area. And so being in real estate, it gave me some more perspective on it, and it solidified a lot of things I did know. And what it helped me the most was just understanding price per square feet, understanding what questions to ask with a construction budget. That's where it came in to be valuable.
Yeah. Also, I want to back up just a little bit.
Do it.
So like you were talking about the coffee cart and delivering and all that stuff, and you were delivering cold brew lattes.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming like you were just making that straight out of your house.
I was until I wasn't. I wasn't supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, there's licenses, so
I wasn't. I don't know.
you got the job done.
Got the job done. No. Early on, like the first week, I was like, "This is what I gotta do." But then I started renting out other kitchens.
Mars, right? I remember that one.
Yep, I did that for a while. I used St. Kilda for a while. So I did for about the first week, and I was like, I need to find an actual place.
Yeah.
So
I had this thought come to mind, but where did the cold brew latte just come from, and like how did you get
The
there?
origin of it.
Yeah,
totally. So when I worked at ARC, it's now in Chain. That's it changed when I worked there. But when I worked at ARC, they had a cold brew latte on draft. And it was an actual like a nitro version. And as soon as I started, they took it away. But I knew it existed. Like I knew it was a thing at one point. And when we built the cart, we didn't have enough money to buy an espresso machine. So I was like, what are we going to serve? Hot coffee? And that's it. Like I don't think that's very appealing. Like that's not what's going to sell. And so I was like, what can we batch pretty easily that we can serve? And so the cold brew latte came to mind because I was like, it's cold brew concentrate, simple syrup, and milk. Okay. And before it was whole milk and oat milk. And over time, we would make it from scratch, and then we would start to batch it, and we start to batch it more, and then make it bigger and bigger batches. And then we got to the point where it was just like the oat milk cold brew latte is the drink. That's the product. And it was something that I discovered was infinitely scalable. The way you'd make one drink, like the recipe, you can make it. This is some perspective. So we did 900 servings on Saturday at the farmer's market. That same recipe for making one, it can scale to making 16, 17, 5-gallon kegs.
Wow.
So it was perfect. Yeah. Like consistent. And it almost tastes, in my opinion, almost tastes better when it's scaled like that.
Yeah.
Opposed to just making it one drink. And so it was like, oh, this is crazy. Like I can actually take one product, scale it, and people love it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's amazing. So whenever you guys were closed, there was something that happened in the summer of last year, still going on, that helped you guys launch.
Totally.
Talk about that.
Yeah, so it's called Super Secret Brunch Club. So there was conversation early on in the fall. Oh, no, it was like actually the winter of 2021. Oh, 2022. Crazy. 2022. And what was decided was like, it was actually a conversation with Secret Admirer, and they said, hey, we want to do this brunch club. We have a great outside patio. It's beautiful. We're getting it painted. It's going to be awesome. We want to do a brunch club where we bring in vendors, like food vendors, but we need coffee. And so Alex Prince, he was working for Nick Tillenhast at the time. He was like, hey, Nick, what if we brought Envy back? And I was like, and he talked to Nick, and then Alex brought about it to me. He was like, what do you think about this? And I'm like, because I knew something in that moment. I knew that if we brought it back from Brunch Club, we would have to do something more. Like that was a sign of like, okay, if we're going to do this summer, it's game on. Like we're not going to close up shop and just go another year without doing anything. I was like, I'm not going to do that. When we closed, people were shocked. And we had a lot of momentum. And I think that there was a lot of confusion, like, whoa, like what happened? I think on the outside, we were always busy, but we just had internally, we were not set up for success. And so I was like, if we bring this back, people are going to freak out. Like they're going to be stoked. And I can't just be like, sorry, we're closed again. I can't do that to them. So I really started, that got the ball rolling for thinking about really bringing it back full time.
Cool. And throughout the summer, you guys saw a lot of success.
Yeah.
But you guys were also working behind the scenes, looking into KOA and everything like that, what was like the moment where you're like, we're doing it? Like we got it. We're opening up shop in November.
Oh man. So I knew we were doing it pretty much that first conversation that I had with Alex. Like I was like, we're going to do it. I waited to break that news to some people, but I was like, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So I started working on it in January of 2022. Okay. Crazy story. We built it up. I had to make decisions before I knew them. So I had to make decisions on signing basically like a letter of interest for the space. I had 2 weeks to decide. No investors, no plan. I had to just be like, hey, listen, I'm putting some money down to do this. So I did that with full confidence. It was almost like building the bridge as we're walking on it. And I did not have the plan in place. I was like, I know enough. One of my rules, and it's funny because it keeps going down the older I get. I should say the more experience I get, the lower this number goes down. Before, I was like, I need to know like 85% of a situation before I make a decision. Now then it was like 80%. Now it's like 65%, which probably explains a lot. But at the time, I was like, I know about 75%, 80% of what I need to know to make this decision, which is we have a brand, we have a product people want, we have a location, we're going to find a way to do it. And so there were times where when I basically needed to sign the lease, it was like, I don't know if this is going to work out. It was crazy. There was a lot of risk involved. And I had to keep delaying the lease because I was like, I don't have money yet. Thankfully, the landlord was super patient with me, but I had to basically make a lot of commitments before I knew I could fulfill them. Mm-hmm. And finally, we found investment and we were able to make the thing happen. But it was brutal. I mean, I didn't really know until like July.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that process on finding investments? Because it's a lot of entrepreneurs out there and creatives that they need investments to start their business, but they don't know.
Yeah, totally.
How to get that capital.
100%. I think this is a big topic. We could probably go pretty deep in the weeds here. I think that a few things. You're going to find people that just want to give you money because they have money and they just want to invest in cool things. And then you're going to have people who have really, really good ideas but have not proven themselves. And they have a really hard time finding money. I think this is really, I feel really passionate about this because of my experience and what I've experienced with a lot of young people. What's difficult is that entrepreneurs, especially like young entrepreneurs, and then like people who have made it, I think that, and even creatives, I think that there's not a lot of communication there. So people who have made it have some good capital, and people who are young, ambitious, creative, have good ideas, they don't know how to talk to each other typically. And so when I go to investors, I would say, hey, listen, here's the dream, here's the plan, this is what it's going to feel like, this is the culture, this is how it's going to work. And they say, but what's the ROI? Like, how is this going to make sense for me financially? Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, I don't know. So I had to go back to the drawing board. I probably wrote 10 business plans. Wow. To figure out how do I make this fit, still the dream, but also make this airtight. Because when you've not proven anything, your plan has to be airtight. This can't be, hey, I'm really talented. Like I'm good with working with people. Would you want to invest with me? That's not typically how it works. Mm-hmm. You got to be able to show them, listen, this is how much I'm gonna need from you. This is where that money's going. This is how long it's gonna take to get there, or this is how long it's gonna take to pay you back. This is like, I don't really have much, so I have no real collateral. Like, you can't take my house because I don't have a house. Like, so because I don't have a house, because I don't have a car that's worth taking, this is what I'm basically betting my life.
Yeah.
Like on this. Mm. And it was so difficult. I talked to probably 15 people, 12 to 15 people. I had a lot of serious conversations. The risk was just too high. And I get it. Like, the way that coffee shops operate is really not smart, like financially. Yeah. And I was like, I have to figure out a solution, like how to actually make this work. And I actually, at one point in June, I had investors lined up, and it was actually the current owners or the previous owners of the shop that I worked at, the ones that bought it when I worked there at ARC. What they were in the business of is they would buy a shop, they would turn it around, and they would sell it, and they would move on to the next one. And I had a good relationship with them still. So I was like, hey, do you want to invest in Northern Vessel? They saw what we were doing. They believed in it. They said, yes, we're down. Here's how it's going to work. Here's the structure. I was going to give up a lot. I was willing to give up like 50% plus of the business. But I was like, I have nothing to give. Like I have nothing to like show for what I've done.
Right.
I've only shown that I don't know how to run a business. So, and then it failed. So I'm like, I don't have any proof of concept. So it's like, you have to choose your battle. You have to give up a lot for your dreams sometimes, especially when you're getting started. Flew some of the guys out, and basically a week before we had to sign the lease, they backed out. And I was like, what? At that point, it was so crazy because at that point I had so many conversations and I had rewritten the business plan so many times that I had it I had the offer so like really airtight that I was like, I don't even care. And I said, got my computer, started sending out emails of offers of like, this is what I'm offering you. This is the percentage. This is how much I need. This is what your return is going to be over this many years. This is what it's going to look like. And I was able to be like pinpoint accuracy. This is what's going to happen. And I got to know. Like even that night, people were looking at that night. And some of these were like pretty sophisticated investors. And I was like, if no one is going to take this seriously, and I've done so much work on this because I'd been working every single day since January, and this is July. I was like, then it's not possible. It's like literally not possible. And that next day I called Travis, who was my financial coach. I was like, what do I do? I was like, this is the offer. And I was just telling him. I wasn't even asking him. I was like, just telling him. And he goes, I might know someone crazy enough to do this. So he calls up with some of his friends, and then he gets back to me and says they're interested. He goes, I'm also interested. And that took me by surprise because he's typically pretty risk adverse in his investments. And I knew that he walked through 2021 with me, so he knew what risk this was. And they came in clutch. And pretty within that week. So on Sunday night, I found out that the investors backed out. On Friday, it was pretty solidified that I found investors. Wow. They were going to front the full thing.
Wow.
And all I can attribute it to is just understanding what the investors are looking for. I think that when you think about just yourself of like, this is what I want, I think that from an investor standpoint, they're thinking to themselves, okay, you have everything to lose because you're young, you're ambitious, all this. But I'm supposed to fork over my hard-earned money that I've been working at for years. Mm-hmm. That's tough. That's a tough trade. And there's actually a very high chance that I'm not going to get this back.
Yeah.
And so I think that what I discovered was I had to be incredibly persistent in making sure that I had their best interest over my own interest, and making sure that was going to work for them.
Wow. That's amazing, but also like inspiring because, you don't hear a lot of 28, 29, now 30-year-olds doing that where it's like, I'm literally just signing my life away. And if this doesn't work, then you never know. But it's amazing. And you guys have now had 8 months of success?
Yeah, we just finished our 7th month officially.
Month.
Yeah,
Okay.
7th month officially.
Yeah.
And
So you guys started an idea from the beginning that wasn't just based solely on the shop, which was wanting to get your product in as many people's hands, and it came from an app. Mm-hmm. And talk to us about what Coffee Club started like and what it is now.
Absolutely. So Coffee Club was actually really pivotal to gain the investors' trust because what it said was, hey, we're going to have a recurring source of revenue that is going to produce for us additional revenue even on top of the monthly subscriptions. And the original plan actually bombed within like 2 weeks. The plan was unlimited drip, endless drip, and then a bottle subscription. So you get a bottle of cold brew latte every week and you pay for the month. And we figured out that we had no one cared. We developed an app. We spent a ton of money on an app. It was sick. We like launched it. It like bombed. Like didn't do well. The response wasn't great. The actual interest level in the subscriptions was like people could not care less. And we're like, this is what I was riding on. Like this is what the business was like riding on, because it was a way for us to kind of crack the code. That was the goal. It didn't work. And so we hit the drawing board again, and we figured out a way that you want to give people what they want. Like if people are telling you this is what I want, give them what they want, you know? Yeah. And so we discovered a different approach that has gone significantly better, and I think it has a lot more ceiling to it still. And so Coffee Club is a monthly subscription. It's $10 a month, and you get a bunch of discounts all over the store, 10% off, pretty much everything, $10 off our big bottles of cold brew latte. You can pick them up anytime. You get a free drink on your birthday, free drink when you sign up. And there's going to be a lot more in store as well with Coffee Club. But we found that it's been very effective. We see that on average, each customer saves about $18 per month who have Coffee Club, which is significant. And we're like, okay, it's working. Like it's been valuable for people. So,
yeah. Now you guys are also in the farmers market.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how that's been going.
Yeah. So I was very opposed to the farmers market. I was opposed to it because I knew how well it would do. I thought it would break us. Like I thought that it would be too much volume for what we were able to handle. I thought logistically it was just going to work out. Like I had this sense of like, okay. So our goal is to get our product into as many hands as possible, and you put us in an environment of 20,000 people. I'm like, I don't know how we handle that. Yeah. So that was a dilemma. One day, so I'd actually approached us. Usually it's really difficult to get into the farmer's market. They actually approached us and were like, hey, we want you there. And I was like, nope. I was like, nope, can't do it. And one day, two of the people who work for NV were like, we want to take this on. Michael and Andrew, they're like, we want to do this. I'm like, okay, that's one problem that could be solved by them. Is them saying, hey, listen, give it to us. Second thing was like, how do we keep the product cold? We figured out a solution for that. And I was like, what's holding us back now? Like we have the resources, we have the team. I'm not going to be the one who's doing it all. What do we have to lose? So we started, and we've done 4 weeks now. It's been bonkers. We've loved every weekend. It's been a blast. Every weekend is better than the last, and it's been awesome. So
can you talk numbers, or is that kind of like
so I can talk cups.
Okay,
I can do that.
Yeah.
So the first weekend we did about 720 cups total.
Wow.
Now we're averaging about 900 cups. I think our capacity is probably 1,100. That's if from 7 to noon, it's like just nuts the whole time. I think we'll get there, especially in July. I think we'll get there. But it is totally changed the game for us. The shop is far busier just because of how many people are finding out about us. The guys think that 60 to 70% of new customer or people at the farmers market have never heard of us. Now the number's probably going to go down as the longer we're there.
Sure.
But the first weekend, they're like, so many people had never heard Northern Vessel, and we're like, that's crazy. Like we're just down the street.
Yeah,
that's crazy. And so we're sold now. We're like, we're going to do this as long as we can. So the shop has been a lot busier, which has benefited everybody. So we're stoked.
That's cool. Yeah. You've also had interest from other parties besides Downtown Farmers Market.
Yeah.
One specifically being the Iowa Cubs.
Yep.
Tell us about what that relationship looks like and what it looks like in the future.
Yeah. So I played baseball growing up, and so my like natural perspective is like there's not enough coffee in the sports world. I just don't think that, especially coffee and sports, usually blend very well. Usually you have a lot of creative people in the coffee world, and they don't usually play sports. That's kind of a stereotype, but I think it's true. That's fair. I think it's fair. And so I feel like my background is so different than that I'm like, dude, there's so many opportunities in the sports world for good coffee. Like right now it's just Dunkin', Starbucks. I'm like, we can do better than that. So for me, that's always been on the radar. And they actually approached me and were like, hey, do you want to do a sponsorship? And I'm like, we're not interested in a sponsorship, which would be like us paying them for signage. But I was like, but have you thought about coffee? And they're like, actually, we're looking for vendors right now. And they basically said like, hey, our first game's in like a week. Can you provide hot coffee? And we're like, let's do it, you know? Yeah. And so we made it happen. And if, you know, so one of my this is so vital for me, this principle. It's the 5 Ps. It's prior preparation prevents poor performance. It's too late often to jump on an opportunity. Like it's too late to prepare once an opportunity arrives. So if an opportunity presents itself and you haven't thought about it, you don't feel like you've been preparing for it, it's gonna be very difficult to take those opportunities. So for us, we feel like we were in that mindset of like, hey, we want to do this someday. And so when they approached us, it was like, yes, and this is how we're going to do it. And they were like, okay, let's do it. And it didn't go super well in terms of like sales. That wasn't the point of it. The point of it was to like develop a relationship. And so as of now, we'll talk about this probably in a minute of our next venture and how this ties in. But from now on, I think we're probably pretty much done for the summer with iCubs, but we have a lot of plans in the future to work with them.
That's awesome. So some of those plans are in the far future, like next season or even in the fall with, you know, potentially other sports worlds. But something that's going to impact them is your product, but how it's being served. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So this is big time. And we've talked a little bit off air about this, so this won't be like a huge surprise. But 3 years ago, roughly, I had the idea of, okay, the principle of how do we get our product into as many hands as possible. A cold brew latte, a lot of people love our cold brew latte. So where's our limiting factor? Well, our limiting factor is preparation and just where we can be. And I thought, what if we change that? Like, what if we remove those obstacles? And what if we canned a product? And so for 3 years, it's been on the radar. And depending on when this podcast is released, we'll either have it in hand or it will just be days away from it being released. So we're gonna have a cold brew latte, oat milk cold brew latte can. This has been kind of the dream.
Yeah.
When we launched this shop, the thought was having a shop and having cold brew lattes everywhere. And this is gonna be the first step to that. So we're really pleased. We feel like this is a first step out of many steps to really own this craft of ready to drink beverages. We have a long way to go, but we're really pleased with this first version. So the goal is to have that at Iowa Cubs next year, and then this even as early as this fall to have our product in stadiums.
Yeah. You mentioned something that we've actually said on the podcast multiple times earlier, that entrepreneurship and like just being creative is like being a professional problem solver.
Yeah.
How did you go about seeing, okay, we have a product, we need to completely change how we're making it now?
Absolutely.
How's that process been?
It's been tough. But it started with me going to a Dodger game. And in LA, I was visiting, went to a Dodger game. I was like, why is there no coffee here? Like, this doesn't make sense to me. It's a hot day. Dodgers are one of the most iconic stadiums. Dodger Stadium is one of the most iconic stadiums in the States. Like, why do they not have coffee? Or if they do, why is it so hard to find? And I was like, wouldn't it be nice if someone had a really good canned product at the stadium? And from there, it's been a journey of discovering what it takes to make a cold brew latte can. The reality is you can't, unfortunately, brew it, prepare it, can it, it's ready to go. There's a lot of regulations. So what we've had to figure out is how do we find the most raw ingredients from the cold brew to the oat milk to the sugar. How do we do this? And I would say probably 99%. I don't know of any cans currently they're very accessible. There are some like pretty like small batch cans that do a good job of this, but they're not very accessible. Any accessible canned drink is made with coffee that isn't like real coffee. The reason is that cold brew when it's prepared, it can contain a contaminant called botulism, which is deadly. And that's a huge problem. So if we were to make cold brew, can it, over time, that can is going to develop botulism. So what you have to do is you have to figure out a way to make the concentrations levels so strong, so heavy, that botulism cannot grow. So far on the market, though, all the companies that do that, they're not even a coffee company. They're like, they make all sorts of ingredients for other like ready-to-drink products. And so coffee is just kind of something they do on the side. And they add things, after it's brewed, they add things called bricks. They add bricks to the coffee to make it strong enough so that it's safe. But it tastes like garbage. Like it's not good. I had it. My initial thought was, this is what every can tastes like to me. It all makes sense. Like this makes sense. So the thought was, how do we solve the issue of what coffee we use? And I can't talk about the brand we're using just because of just from licensing. But we're using a brand of coffee that does this direct to consumer currently, and they just are branching out and doing commercial work now. And we're gonna be the first product on the market that uses their product.
Yeah.
And it's a pure product. They figured out a way to brew it.
Which is a great product. Like
Yes.
whenever you told me what it was, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing.
It's really, really good. It's pure. There's integrity through and through. There's nothing added to it. And so we're like, this is the one. I actually flew out to Colorado a couple weeks ago to visit the facility, and it was only confirmed like this is the right company to work with. So that was really important to us. Second component was oat milk. And we found a really high quality oat milk. And when I took my first sip of it, after iterations, and it's never a, hey, one and done. It's like, it's a process. And when I tasted the coffee for the first time, it was like, oh, this is familiar. It's maybe not quite there, but it reminded me of the cold brew latte. And I was like, there we go. That's a start. And so we're really stoked. We feel like, we feel like it's going to remind people of the CBL, and that's all we want it to do right now. We'll get there. We'll get to the point where the cold brew latte from the shop is indistinguishable from the cold brew latte in a can. We're going to get there. And I think we'll get there soon. But from this first iteration, I think it's better than any can on the market that I've tried. And that's a bold statement, but that's what I believe.
Yeah.
So
How important is it to you on the ingredients you use for not only your cold brew lattes, but all your drinks, even in the shop? How important are your ingredients?
It's really tough. It's really tough because you have two elements at work. You have, especially for the can, you have what is ethical and what is realistic. So it's like, what game are you playing? Because we could extend the shelf life by months and months and months if we use some different ingredients. But because we're using the ingredients it has a shorter shelf life. Yeah. However, if we use the ingredients we wanted to, it would have no shelf life. So it's like, where is that line? And realizing that it's all an iterative process. So we're going to use the best ingredients that we can, that are available to us, that make us give us the ability to use the product. And our goal is always going to be iterative and making it better and better. At the shop, it's the same thing. It's like we want it to taste delicious, but we also are mindful of the ingredients that we use.
What are some other drinks that you guys offer besides like the staple cold brew latte that you are really high on that you would recommend people trying?
Absolutely. The Spanish latte is huge, 100%. That was the leader for a while. It has sweet condensed milk and hazelnut and cinnamon. It's delicious. It's pretty sweet, but it's really like full, like it's really creamy. The coastline is really delicious. It's cold brew oat milk, and then it has macadamia, coconut, and vanilla. That one's big time. And then I would say that probably the strawberry matcha has been a big hit. And it's only iced. It's very LA. No one is really doing it here for the most part. And so it doesn't really taste like matcha. I'm not a big matcha fan, but I'll drink it. I was like,
me too.
It's good.
Yeah.
I'm sad you didn't throw the New Orleans in there. That's like an OG for me.
The New Orleans is an OG for sure. I could talk about the whole menu. Our rule of thumb is unless we're blown away, we won't put it on the menu.
Okay.
And so I could just talk about the whole menu then.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Walk us through like the process of creating these drinks. Like, are a lot of these drinks stuff that you've been practicing and getting better at since like the beginning of Northern Vessel, or are these just new creations?
Neither. My mentor in LA, his coffee shops, he's figured a lot of things out. And so we've modeled a lot of our menu off of his. There's not many drinks on our menu that are originals. And I don't mind saying that because I'm like, these drinks have been proven time and time again.
You don't need to recreate the wheel.
It's like these work, and they work within our system, and our system is really, really important. So we're not going to do anything that deviates from that system. And so we've obviously tweaked a few things just to make it kind of our own, but for the most part, we're like, this works. It works within our system. It makes us really, really fast, and so we're gonna do this. And it's people love them. So
yeah, talk about like coffee beans and like that kind of thing. Because as someone that consumes coffee like a little bit, I'm not very educated on like what type of like, I don't even know the proper terminology, but like the roasts are like, you know, there's like Ethiopian coffee beans, there's like coffee beans from like Central America. Like what do you guys use for your product?
So there's something called a blend, there's something called a single origin. Blends are multiple single origins being put together. And a single origin is pretty self-explanatory. It's like, this was grown at this farm. And yeah, this was grown here, it was harvested here. This one farm, you know, created the coffee, or created the, you know, the coffee cherries, harvested it, all of that. So our single origin coffees we get from international roasters, and we've been really intentional about that because we want people to have a really unique experience. So right now we have a roaster that we're working with from Oslo, Norway. They've been phenomenal. So we used
Which is pretty, I mean, I'm not like a coffee snob, but like I've talked to some who are like, like some of those brands that you guys partner with are pretty prestigious in what they do. So you're offering like the best experience possibly in Des Moines with your coffee.
Tim Winnabow is regarded as probably one of the best roasters in the world.
Yeah.
So what you're getting is some of the best coffee objectively. That you could probably get anywhere.
Yeah. Is picking coffee and picking beans similar to like picking a whiskey or a bourbon?
It's similar.
Okay.
I don't think it's that complex though. It's not that big of a dish. It's not as like nuanced as that though.
Okay.
With our blend, we use for pretty much everything. It's 50% Colombia, 50% Brazil, and it goes with milk and it goes good without milk. And so we've used that and as our base for everything, and that seemed to work really well. It seems to play really well with everything we do. I would say that it's not as complex as I think a lot of people make it out to be. It's like, do you like chocolatey things? Do you like fruity things? And you can kind of pick your coffee based on that. It's pretty simple. Yeah.
The Des Moines coffee scene is, like you said, has not been, I don't know, very well rounded in a sense. So even you said you're not afraid to admit a lot of the drinks that you've brought here from the LA scene. How has like that influenced what you kind of want to create culturally here? And where do you see that going in the future?
Yeah, totally. And I think that the Des Moines coffee scene has grown a ton since even 2017. It's grown a ton. And so it's encouraging to see that. I do think that what we're trying to offer, for us, we don't really look at what other people are doing and saying like, okay, they're doing this, now we need to do this. Like I don't really feel super influenced by what other people are doing in the Des Moines scene. Not because I don't like respect it or because I don't think it's cool, but it's because like I think we just have a pretty different vision of what we want things to look like. The biggest aspect has been experience. I think for us, everything comes down to experience. If the coffee isn't good, if the service isn't good, if the music's too loud, if it's not clean, all those things hinder the experience. And so for us, the focus is not on the coffee we're serving that day. It's not on the service. It's not on the cleaning. It's not on the music. It's the entire operation. And we feel like if one of those things is out of whack, then we're not doing our job. And so for us, the culture is so important because we want a culture of hospitality where people feel like, I'm just going to say this because this might rub some people the wrong way. I don't want people to feel uncomfortable for us asking for water. I've had that experience so many times. I don't want people to feel like they're making the staff, they're like irritating the staff because they have a question, or that they are inconveniencing the staff because they have a question, they need something, because they spill something. We've been very intentional about providing the best experience that we can, and going above and beyond. And so our goal is 1% better every day. That's what we talk about a lot. So making the coffee better is helping the experience. Making the service better is helping the experience. And I feel like for us, one of the biggest problems we've seen just in coffee shops in general, statewide, or nationwide, is that I think we've really lost hospitality. I think the hospitality industry has really lost its sense of hospitality. And for us, we want to do our part in bringing it back.
Yeah. Shout out to the staff at Northern
Totally.
Vessel.
Yeah, shout out to you guys.
Andrew, Mike, Drew, Emma, Claire, Savannah, right? I haven't met her yet somehow, but great people.
No, they're absolutely crushing.
Yeah.
And speaking of hospitality, I was there a couple Fridays ago, and like you was walking around asking people like, "Can I get you a cup of water?" And I'm like, "What? What are you doing, TJ?" But that's crazy because you won't get that at any other coffee shop. So
How do you see creating that culture like influencing what you guys do down the road?
Yeah. So for us, I mean, there's a few goals, a few visions. So actually, kind of our vision statement is to identify problems in the coffee industry that kind of resonate with us that we feel like we can solve. Like that's our vision for what we do. And so, can coffee fit within that role? Because we're like, okay, this really interests us. We feel like we have an opportunity to tap into this. We feel like it's still new enough and no one's really crushing it yet. That we feel like even though brands are popular, we don't feel like anyone's crushing it from like a taste perspective. So like this is a problem that maybe we can help solve this problem. But from an influence standpoint, we're like, man, how can we do our part and play a role in bringing that hospitality back? The fact that you see Netflix shows who are like making fun of pretentious coffee shops, the fact that that's a thing is super problematic to me. And I'm like, I don't care. Like for me, I'm like, I don't care how good your coffee is. If you don't treat people well, if you're really exclusive in how you treat people, I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't care about that. And so for us, the focus is how can we have a big impact, on the hospitality scene. I think we only get there by going nationwide with our cans and getting some prominence from a recognition, from just being more well known. And hopefully with that influence, we can make a big impact on the hospitality side of things.
With being an influence outside, you're also gaining influence like internally and like getting influence from others. Who's helping you guys by influencing what you do moving forward, like mentors or just other influencers?
No one in the coffee industry.
Okay.
Really, like there is one in LA who's he's a big time influence. I think we see things in a lot of similar ways, but it's all people who either online that I'm listening to. It's all people that I've had working relationships for a while, but it's very few people who are actually in the industry. I'll pay attention to people who are doing certain parts of the industry really well. I'll pay attention to that. This guy named Isaiah, she just placed 4th in the world for the barista competition. And he's helped me a ton from the actual like coffee making side of things. He's helped me a ton, and I looked up to him a lot. But from like where we're trying to go, there's really no examples that I've seen who are on that path. And so it's trying to look for people who are examples in their own respective field.
Okay.
Part of like the hospitality and just like the overall experience of Northern Vessel, like it's like the actual hospitality that your workers are, giving to like the people that come in, like welcoming them and all that, helping people. Also, it is like you said, like the music, the space. Sure. What kind of like helped you guys land on like what the space looks like? Because it's sick. It's different too for like Iowa.
No, I appreciate that. We have a lot of plans in the future to make it even better. I think that the space is super unique. If you've not been, it's like a triangle, and so we wanted the space to do its thing. Like we wanted to we wanted to let what we're doing revolve around what the space was giving us and how it's designed. We felt like we wanted to give a real like almost like a Japanese style where it's minimal but it's really beautiful. It's also fairly comfortable. It's not comfortable enough like cushions, but it's like it's really, really good for community. It's really good for sitting next to people and talking to people. It's really good for introducing yourself to other people. And we have felt like first of all, just letting the space do its thing and revolving around that. And then number two, really being able to highlight this attitude. When you walk in, it kind of sets the tone of like what kind of shop we are. And that, hey, we pay a lot of attention to detail. So excellence and simplicity, that's like a big thing for us. So we want people to notice that. And then number two, we want people to feel like, hey, I can sit next to someone on a bench and it's not weird. And I can actually maybe get to know them. And the amount of people who came in as strangers and now who are friends, it's insane to me. So that's been, at first it was a little weird getting people accustomed to it, but now it's like, there are people who come in and they just say hi to each other and they're like talking and laughing. I'm like, you guys, like 2 months ago, you guys didn't even know who each other were.
Yeah.
And that's amazing to me.
So you're talking about kind of the goal is like coffee in as many hands as possible. And this might not be something that you want to do, but
Sure.
Have you ever thought about opening up a secondary shop, maybe out of the state or maybe even in Iowa somewhere, but just having a couple other like home bases, if you will, to like maybe, because once you start getting cans, it's like, okay, how are we getting these cans to places? Maybe it's like having those other spots, those hubs.
I want to be careful what I say.
Okay.
A few reasons. One is that I'm pretty ambitious, and sometimes I need to be careful with that. I've also don't know if I've had these conversations with like my business partners. I want to be careful out here, and there's like, what the heck? You're doing what? No, it was a principle from the start. One location only, with a really scalable product. The only way that you could twist my arm to having a location is if we're like on the West Coast with like cans and it's doing really well, to open one in like LA. Yeah. If we're doing really well on the East Coast, to open one in like New York. Like that would be the only case or only scenario that I would even consider it. But I don't know if that would happen. Yeah. We would have to be doing really well and it would have to make like all the sense in the world for us to do that. The main reasons we don't want to have one location is it's really hard to recreate the experience. Right. It's really hard to recreate that staff culture. My mentor in LA, he's opening a second location, opening his third location soon. And they've had a lot of difficulty with staff. And I'm like, it's like almost immediate. When you start opening more locations, it's so hard to keep that same expectation. And so definitely not Iowa, potentially on the coast, because I think it would be a completely different concept and no one would have a reference point to Des Moines. So that'd be the only chance that would happen, I think.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I feel like we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, like, I feel a lot of people will get an insight to just who you are, but also like what you're about. Because I mean, you talking about hospitality the way you do, I mean, it's on your arm now. Yeah. You know, and that like reminded me of something that I literally reposted on Instagram of like creating culture, and one of the keys was like be what you want to see. Yeah. And so like you're leading by example, pushing forward what it is that you want Northern Vessel to be and to embody, which is really cool and really inspiring. And I think a lot of people, like, if they haven't caught on yet to just how infinitely big Envy can get, they will eventually. So,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Super cool, man. So tell us like practically next steps. Like, I mean, you're 7 months in. What's coming up soon?
Yeah, the cans is the big thing. Yeah. So again, right now we're still waiting on production. We're finalizing really our licenses, and that should be done in a matter of a week or two. So we're really close, and then the product has already been ordered. So as soon as that gets to the co-packer, as soon as labels get finished up, because this kind of goes hand in hand. As soon as all the licenses are done, we're ready to rumble. And I think that the first run's gonna be 2,500 cans. So it's almost like if you get one, you were one of the first people to get a can. We're not gonna be in retail stores. That was very intentional. No grocery stores, no gas stations. And so we're plotting where they are gonna land. I think for me, where we're really thinking is high traffic areas, stadiums, festivals, breweries, things of that nature. And So for us, it's going to be pretty much all hands on deck for it. We want to make sure the shop stays intact and is not affected by the growth. We want to make sure that the farmers market continues to crush and then trying to launch this canning situation as smoothly as we can. The plan right now is we'll do 2,500 cans, see how it goes, get some feedback. If the data shows people are buying again, we'll get another order going. That order is going to be way more significant in terms of volume. And so we're going to really make sure we know what we're doing. If the feedback is, hey, this product isn't there yet, we'll hit the drawing board over the winter and come back strong with the spring. So we're going to let the people talk, let the people tell us what they think and what they want to see different, and what they, if they like it or not. And really that's going to be all hands on deck. So for me, I'm going to be stepping away from the shop more and working full time on the cans.
Cool.
I might have to get a can and hold on to it for who knows how long.
Yeah.
Who knows? if it blows up, then I'm like, I got one of the original 2,500.
Totally.
We'll get you to sign one.
I know, seriously, for sure. We can make that happen.
There's some other super cool stuff happening around the shop. New merch. New merch drops.
Yep.
Y'all are still supplying Secret Admirer for Brunch Club. I think by the time this will air, they'll still have 2 left.
I think so.
And then July, super fun stuff happening. What's happening in July?
We're doing a block party.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a good time. For a second, I was like, oh, there's a lot going on. What are you talking about? It's going to be a block party, shutting off the entire block in front of NV. We're going to have a dunk tank. We're going to have games. We're going to have lemonade on tap with some other surprises. And it's gonna be a blast. So I'm not sure again when this is gonna be aired, but if this is before the 15th, you should definitely make it.
Yeah.
Come one, come all. It's gonna be a blast. It's gonna be a party. So I don't feel like there's a lot of things in Des Moines like this where it's just like, hey, we're throwing this thing. Come be here for it. And so for us, we're like, let's just make it happen.
That's awesome.
For people that want to go, if you're shutting off the block, where can they park?
Yeah, just anywhere north of the shop.
Gotcha.
There's a strip mall with like subways and whatnot. And usually in the evening, it's pretty open. There's also free street parking anywhere north and east of the shop.
Gotcha.
So this has been would you say 6-year journey?
Yeah.
Yeah. So from LA to Des Moines and, who knows where. What are some things that you've learned, like practically that you should have implemented, or voices you were listening to? I mean, you've mentioned that in passing, but what are some of the big takeaways that you've learned in these past 6 years?
For sure. A few things. One, always keep your customer in mind. I think that sometimes we can get so focused on what we want to do and not think about what value are we creating for other people. And so for us, we've made the best decisions when we have considered what is our customer actually asking for, and are we willing to give that to them? Because if we do, that seems to be a much better model than saying, hey, I'm just going to stick to my guns and do whatever I want to do. Now, there's a time for that, for sure. Sometimes we get asked to do things that we're never going to do. But I'm talking more of what is the heartbeat of our customer base? What are they telling us? So being really intentional about listening to whether it's a client, if you're doing freelance work or have a regular job, whether it's a customer, whether if you're serving food or drink, being really in step with what your customer needs and what they want. Number 2 is, I talk about this a lot, but being aggressively patient. I really view it as like a runner who's on the starting block and they're ready. They're maybe a little bit anxious. They've been training for this. If they go off before the gun sounds, they're going to be disqualified. If they go off too late, they're going to miss it. They're going to fall behind, probably not win the race. And so for us, always staying ready, always staying prepared has been a huge thing. And I think that if you don't know what to do, start preparing. Like if you don't know what to do, show up to work. If you don't know what to do, just start learning. And I think that for me, if I would have said, hey, I don't know how to do something, so I'm not going to do it, we wouldn't have done anything. From building the cart to doing deliveries. I didn't know I figured it out literally driving. I've had to figure out, how to find routes. Like if that's a limiting thing for you, then I think you're going to have a really hard time. So being aggressively patient means having that drive, having that fire, but knowing when to strike, knowing when to wait. And when you're waiting, prepare always. And I think that the last thing is being really careful with who you listen to in terms of advice. There's so many gurus out there. Hey, take my course and you're going to make this much money. Take my course and you're going to learn how to sell. There's a lot of voices out there that I think that we need to be wary of. There's also a lot of voices out there we just need to have better context for. A context. So like someone might say, I have great advice, but maybe it's someone who is 15 years into their career and it makes sense for where they're at, but maybe not for you if you're 6 months in. So I think just trying to be really discerning in that. The last thing I would say, and I think that people often say the opposite, but I actually disagree with this. I think that you should tell your ideas to a lot of people. I think that's the only way to get feedback. There's a lot of fear, especially early on, that I was like, I'm going to share this idea and then someone else is going to do it. Now, you need to be reasonable with it. Like, you need to be reasonable with what you share. There's also the thought of like, only tell good news to those who will support you. I agree with those principles. I think from a business side, be willing to share your ideas. I think that's the only way you get feedback. I think it's the only way that you can start, because sometimes an idea sounds great in your mind until you start saying it out loud. And be like, hey, listen, what do you think about this? And asking a variety of people. For me, the more I've done that, the more I feel like people reveal themselves if they're with me or if they're not. And that's been super valuable. And those who are with me, I'm like, okay, I trust what you're saying. So just talking about things like being open, like, hey, listen, this is what I'm trying to do, has been really valuable. And I think you need to still have discernment. I'm not saying like post on social media, hey, I'm going to release a can when you don't even have a product yet. Like I'm still saying there needs to be discernment, but getting as much feedback early, it makes it legitimate of like, this is actually a real idea. And when you say it, and if someone can give criticism and you still, if you still like, I think I can still do this, that's just like you're stress testing yourself and creating that proof of concept for sure.
Yeah, that's really good stuff.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's good. Thanks for being on, man.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me.
It's been so good.
Yeah.
We end every episode the same way, and we all go around and talk about one thing that's inspired us recently.
Cool.
Who wants to go first?
I can go.
All right, go.
So this past weekend, I went out to Colorado with my fiance, Michaela, and we got our engagement photos taken.
Yeah.
And it was really beautiful, obviously, and it was a really great experience. But also, like, watching our photographer kind of like, you know, from a different perspective, like their approach really kind of inspired me a little bit and gave me some like new fresh ideas on like how I can maybe like take pictures of people or like just stuff like that. There was a couple times where like you know, whether it's like telling us how to pose, like takeaways from that, also how to interact with, you know, people too. Like our photographer Ella, you're the best. She just made us feel confident, like and like as soon as we walked in the door, like, and I think that that kind of ties into hospitality in a way too, you know. Just made us feel like confident in who we are, that we could be ourselves, comfortable with each other and with like someone taking our pictures. And that's something that I know like I'm not always the best at when it comes to me taking pictures. So big takeaway there. Yeah, so that was just really inspiring and kind of just, you know, makes me want to get out and shoot. So, yeah.
Mine is a little bit different, but like I've been recently really inspired by like just the circles I've surrounded myself in, and which there's a lot of variety to that. So like one of my friends, someone I was really close to, like took a leap, took a big risk, and like we're gonna see if it pays off for him. And then like some other friends, like you hearing your story about I took this risk and it paid off for you. specifically this week was super cool because I got to see some people that I poured into a couple years back get drafted in the NBA. And it's like seeing their dream like fulfilled right now. And now they're just hungry as ever, be like, let's get to work. I think that was just really cool, really inspiring for me that I got to be a part of their journey, like even in a small part. And it was just really, really inspiring that they're like everyone is kind of on their own journey and grinding, maybe in silence or maybe apart and keeping to themselves. But like everyone that I see like winning had to put their nose to the grindstone at some point. And it's been really cool. And like I aspire to like stay that hungry.
Sweet. I'm reading a book called $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi. It's a very like business book. It's on sales, and it's been really good for me to combine the creative problem-solving attitude from the coffee business to really like hard and fast rules for business. And I've been really inspired through the book about how much attention to detail goes into making something really, really valuable for somebody else. It's really the thought process of how do I make this so valuable for my client or for my customer that they would feel stupid saying no to it. And so it's been a really good reflection point to me in that some of the things are not complete, like completely correlated. Like I can't apply some of the things being said. However, there's been this pursuit of the whole book so far of like, how do we go after the client's needs in a way that it will be so beneficial to them that they don't even have to think about it? Like, how can I add so much value to them, to what they're doing, whether it's their business, whether it's just a personal life? How can I offer so much value that they're like, yes, they're totally bought in. And then being able to deliver on that. And so that's been really good, especially with the cans, especially with what we're doing at the shop. It's like always having in mind of how can I continue to add value to others. There's a quote I think about a lot. It's just when you help others win, you win too. And I think that is so important. I think that it's like sometimes we can just be for me, I can just be so self-driven and so focused on myself that I forget those who I'm serving. And the more that we're focused on those we're serving, understanding their needs, understanding what they're looking for, understanding what problems they're facing and how I can solve them, I think the more effective I will be and the more satisfied I'll be as well.
That's really good.
Nice. For me, I am reading excuse me. Bro, I'm reading Ruthlessness Elimination of Harry for the 5th time. And it's been, I think this time, I don't know why, but it's clicking with me a lot more than the last 4 times, which has been super, it's been a huge blessing in my life because right now in the season of my life, I'm in Harry at 24/7. So it's been kind of getting me to dial things back. So that's mine.
That's good. Man, we appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Excited for what's to come, man.
Let's go.
So this has been another episode of the Creative Point of View podcast. We'll see you in the next one.
See ya.